It is Wednesday, February 10th, 2021, and we are exploring transitions here this month. And today's talk will refer to the texts we've been studying and some of our best philosophy and wisdom about transition. And it'll also be a little more practical, speaking about really about what it feels like to be in transition and some of my personal lessons that I've learned um, as somebody who has been through a lot of transitions and seems to still be in an elongated one right now. Um, and maybe we always are. But today I'm going to speak directly to some of the questions also that some of the members have been asking, and for the subscribers who are coming to the Founders Friday circles, what people have been sharing has been really moving to me. And today's talk is also very much inspired by the challenges that you've expressed. So with so much brave vulnerability and the wisdom that I've heard from other members that have been offered in such generosity. So, and for those of you who are following along with the video, um, I'll make sure that it's easy for you to find some of the texts that I do end up referring to. And those who are following along live, I gave you a little link. You can chat me if you have any trouble with that, and I'll try to help. So the big challenge with transitions is that we don't want to be in them. Usually, right? We tend to want to be somewhere where we were or somewhere else where we're gonna be. We've been singing a song this month by Andrew Bird called Manifest, where that expresses this the fear of transition and that fear of the unknown, the wide canyon, the deep ocean, the the thing that looks like a place I can't live. I've never been there before, right? That can't be my ecosystem. That can't be my home. And there's a line where he says, she's in midair, radical and free. And neither here nor there, right? Obliged to no one. That's this freedom that we can find in these moments of transition, because the past has set us loose. It isn't here anymore. Our old ecosystem, our old ways of being aren't here. And maybe we haven't arrived where we are next. We haven't, adapted in whatever ways we need to survive in the next space. Where do we find the trust in the transition moment? Where do we find the trust that will actually deliver us fully into whatever our next incarnation is, whatever the next space is? And so that's what I want to talk about today. What do we do when we're actually in that transition space? Because all of the teachings tell us that that letting go of the past and that giving permission for there to be death in life. And death doesn't have to be a literal mortal body perishing. It can be the death of an old job. It can be the death of an old way of being. It can be a death of an old habit. It could be a shift in a relationship. How do we make peace with that? And of course, literal mortal bodies all do die. And so that literal sense of death also is something we all have to make peace with. And so how do we be in those moments? And the irony is, the funny thing is, we are actually all courting transition by being a meditator. We all are people who believe in self-awareness, growth, evolution. We crave it. We love it. And so how do we learn how to accept death and endings as a part of, and all the grief that can come with that, right? And fear that can come with that. How do we accept that as an essential, non-negotiable part of every transition? How do we accept the fear of the future, the fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of not making it in this next space, fear that we made a big mistake and we should have stayed in the past? How do we cope with the anxiety around that, and recognize that taking the leap off the edge of the widest canyon is exactly how we're going to get to that thing that we so crave. It's how we're going to start to experience freedom. Now, of course, I'm always going to say that the answer is coming back to our practices, coming back to the now and the here. And in particular, this week, we've been talking about how to come back into the now and the here in a way that encourages a sense of gentleness. Because all of that fear makes us go into the past and into the future, or a possible future. And our practices all bring us to the infinite wisdom and resources and love that is here and now. Even if we're in midair, it's here and now too. It's just going to be a lot harder to find. Why? Because where we were last week before we felt in midair, or last year, for me, it's been longer. We had certain things that grounded us, right? Hence that metaphor of being in midair, right? We had things that grounded us. We had our rituals, we had our routines, we had those things that worked. And here we may have to meet the moment in new ways. Now, there's a lot of ways to be gentle. And I want you to experiment with all the ways that you can be gentle this week. Holly posted a beautiful poem. It's from last week. She'll read a different one for you tomorrow morning. I may be there too tomorrow morning. I'm hoping to make it. But the poem from last week is called Kindness. It's in that featured section right now. It'll be in sources in perpetuity, but it's tagged in the featured section so that everyone can see that. But that also speaks to that experience of kindness being something, gentleness, something that we learn through going through challenges, through seeing the scary things of life, through seeing there's an image of death in that very poem. But that our life experiences going through transitions on our own teaches us how to be gentle with others that are facing those things. It's how we learn. And this week, I want you to see how often you can bring that gentleness into your relationship to yourself, to your own experience. And there are really infinite ways. I don't have like a list of all the ways to be gentle. There's infinite ways. In our meditation practice this week, we're literally practicing feeling connection points, the points of relationship, whether it's the point of relationship between my sweater and my skin, or the point of relationship between the inhale and my lower lungs. These are physical sensations. The relationship between my mind and my thoughts, can that be gentle? I also just wanted to express right here, because this has been important for me as I go through the transitions that I've been going through. Recognize that going through transition is hard. You're not going to always be able to, you may have those days where you just can't show up to practice. This was echoing through last week's circle. Everybody was like, I'm having a hard time with step A, you know? And when we're really struggling, the very things that will help us most often feel scary. I know for me, I have a resistance to showing up to practice when I'm going through something challenging because I know I'm going to have to then sit and be with it. But I will testify right here and right now that the practices are even more important. But forgive yourself if maybe it has to look different. If you cannot sit in your meditation seat, if that fear is too overwhelming, take a walk, do something, and then thank yourself. Be gentle and be kind. I've been practicing for a long time. So as I'm going through this life transition, it's reminding me of a lot of things in my past, which is good. Because these are the hooks. These are the traumas. These are the things that my practice is saying, hey, we're going to have to resolve these in some kind of way, through some kind of process, because these keep coming up. Don't think of that as regression. See that story and realize it's just a story. That's a label you're putting on it. It's not necessarily, right? It probably means that this transition is coming up because you are able to be with these things now and you just couldn't before. When I'm in a big transition, I do find that old trauma comes up. Some of my oldest stuff from childhood, uh, you know, as I went through my divorce and that relationship falling apart, it sent me way, way back, you know? And yes, when we're going through transition, whatever that is, often there's stuff we have to deal with, right? I'm moving again in a week and a half. There's all this literal stuff I have to deal with. But it's so important to also make time. And this is what our practice space does, make time to just be with the stuff that's coming up. Be kind to yourself when old bad habits crop up. Recognize that these are the ways that you've learned to cope in the past. And they may be necessary to kind of get you over the canyon. It's okay. You will arrive into the next place. As long as you don't kind of keep getting in your own way, you will arrive to the next place. You'll be able to let go of some of those things you've been clinging to that you know you need to. You'll get there. Make peace with even the bad habits when they arise. If that makes sense. Just make sure there's also time to connect to what is real and now, in the here and now. Now, this is the other big theme that I want to get into today, and note any questions that you have, because I'll invite questions in a handful of minutes. I've been contemplating transitions that have gone well for me in the past and transitions that have been difficult. They're all the same in that, well, they're all difficult. They're all challenging in some way or another. The transitions that are the hardest are just the ones that seem like they don't resolve, where I can't find resolution for a long period of time. And I've been contemplating, how does that, or I get to whatever the next phase is and I don't feel satisfied. I've brought all the fear with me, you know? And I've been thinking, what am I doing in those times when I can't arrive into a safe experience again? And of course, eventually I always do. I always do. But how am I kind of getting in my own way? How do I get in the way of transition? And in that, sadly, ironically, keeping the suffering going. Um, And I've learned that for me, it is often that I'm actually holding multiple desires at once, more than one desire at once. And usually I'm not even conscious of it. But for example, right, moving from Brooklyn to upstate and leaving my life behind, I didn't acknowledge a lot of the fear that I had as I was going into that transition. I didn't acknowledge a lot of the grief that I had. I was doing something that is a favorite go-to of mine, which is a creating a kind of false story of hope, a kind of manic excitement about what's next that doesn't let me fully process and be with the challenges. It's a kind of whitewashing that I do in my own self, in my own mind. And when I got there, I found myself showing up to teach in spaces like half-heartedly. And I just found myself kind of engaging in things there. Part of me still wanted to be in the past. Part of me hadn't processed or let go of what was. I hadn't made space to do that. And so while I was saying, oh, I really want to be here, I really want all of this, I want this new life, there was also a voice inside that I wasn't even paying attention to that was saying, I'm not ready. I don't know. Is this right? Same thing when I got married. I got married a couple years after that on the farm, and it was like everything was perfect. Everything was perfect. This is what I want. But there was something inside. I had an almost out of the body experience right before I walked down the aisle. I mean, it was all outdoors, but before everyone was in a circle, my whole family and his family, and I almost couldn't open the door and walk out the house and to that space. One part of me wanted it more than anything, or maybe multiple parts. Other things inside said, you're coming to the brink of a great disaster. The end just has to be near, to quote Andrew Bird in the song we just sang. Some part of me said, this is not going to go well. This is not the answer. And I slipped into the worst depression of my life the day after I was married. And I was divorced by my 1-year anniversary, right? Um, so now what I'm saying is I'm learning how to recognize the multitude of desires that I have at any moment. In that meditation, we tapped into it a little bit. There can be more than one emotion happening at once. There can and will be often competing desires. Now, transitions that have gone well, right? Or where I haven't kind of gotten stuck, they tend to be ones where I'm more honest about the mixed nature. I'm not trying to make this whole thing one thing and it's all perfect, you know? I'm allowing all of the pieces to be here. And and finding a way through my practices, through awareness, through care, through connecting to my counselors and my wise sources, finding a way to, in all of that chaos, clarify and integrate all of these different feelings and desires I have, and visions and stories, getting really clear about what I really want. And that clarity gets me through. It shuts off all of that noise and all of that fear and all of that suffering. It doesn't let that keep me from getting where I'm going. That's why we do, right? It's all here in our ABCs, right? First, you have to arrive and be aware of what is right here and now. Then you have to, you know, you realize, okay, I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm okay to a certain extent if I'm breathing, okay. And then connect to care. What is this practice about? What is this transition about? And so I've been thinking about this for me. What is it about for me that I'm moving to Fort Worth, at least for the next year, to be with my family? There is a lot I'm giving up, and there's a lot I'm gaining. And I have a lot of feelings about all of it. But when I, as I have been doing in my own inquiry practice, get really clear about why this is the right thing right now. There will be another transition later, sure. Right now, this is right because of these reasons. And I can stand by that and stand in that. And when those really core things, if I keep them with me, when those really core things start to shift, maybe then it is time for the next transition. But I need to be able to arrive into the choice that I've made and trust myself to do that. And when conflicting feelings, stories, fears come up, oh, okay, time to sit, right? Time to be with that. And then time to, check back in, and then time to get back up and take care of the people that I'm here to take care of and not be conflicted. Now, the the thing that so many of us cling to when we're afraid. Check this for yourself. When we're afraid, when we're in transition, when we're anxious, when it feels overwhelming, when we don't have clarity yet, when we're in our old bad habits, how did I start smoking again? Or whatever. It's like, how did this happen? When we're in all of this, what do we go to? Control. Trying to control something. And going back through the sources for this week, this month, the quotes that I've put up and passages, this is a big theme, is how do we notice when, rather than coming back to acceptance, awareness, presence, compassion, kindness, gentleness, when instead we're going to control. Control has two modes that we've learned about from the Yoga Sutras. They're called raga and devesha there, but they're attachment and resistance, right? I'm gonna grab onto this. Or if I can just not experience that, I'll be okay, right? If I could just, the line from the Andrew Bird song, don't pretend that you can't hear, right? But we do that all the time. We pretend, right? Oh, this transition's gonna be perfect, but our consciousness is still aware of the things that are unconscious, if that makes sense. Your awareness is still, that stuff still exists. It's just able to work from under the surface in ways that are actually pretty tough and dangerous. And so notice when that control, that sense, that trying to control arises. Because really what we're doing anytime that you're doing that grasping or that pushing away, it's trying to control. It's trying to manipulate the experience. And we can't be gentle with anything that we're trying to control. We can be a gentle presence in someone's life. We can be present. We can be supportive. But notice when you're trying to control yourself or others or anything in the situation. what we're really grasping when we grasp something isn't the other person, or it's just an idea. That's the only thing we can grasp. The essence of another person isn't graspable. Same thing when we refuse. So kindness, gentleness requires us to stop relating to things in that way. Tao Te Ching, verse 29. So I'm going to bring in a couple of these texts, and then you can start writing in your questions as I'm closing the talk. Okay. I've read some of this before. Oh gosh, it's all so good. Well, he says the world is sacred. It can't be improved. If you tamper with it, you'll ruin it. If you treat it like an object, you'll lose it. And then he goes through the section that says there's a time for being ahead, a time for being behind. He says life is transition. There's all the time for all of the different aspects of yourself, a time for being safe, a time for being in danger. Coming to the edge of the widest ocean with such commotion and fear. There is a time for that. And then he says at the end, Lao Tzu, he says at the end, the master sees things as they are without trying to control them. She lets them go their own way and resides at the center of the circle. I'm not going to read it. Well, I'm not going to read the whole one, but 74, which is our other Tao Te Ching passage right now, ends saying, trying to control the future is like trying to take the master carpenter's place. When you handle the master carpenter's tools, chances are that you'll cut your hand. So this theme of, and that one's all about, if you realize things change, there's nothing you'll try to hold on to. If you're not afraid of dying, then you can have everything, basically. So here's all these themes coming together, and this clear teaching about how we get in our own way. I'm preparing an inquiry exercise that's actually going to be part of Right Relationship, the March online course, which I'm having a lot of fun putting together for you guys. It feels very important and resonant right now. I'm putting together an inquiry practice that will focus on what I was talking about having different desires at the same time. Each of those desires, it's like a competing seed trying to grow in the ground. And if we get chaotic results or kind of surprising or weird results, it's probably because there's probably unconscious seeds we've been planting, And so we're going to work on that. That's something I've been starting to develop, and I'm excited to share with you more. For the rest of this month, please stay with the inquiries that I have shared with you about transition. Please keep sharing anything at all that's coming up for you. Everything that you put into Nora Village enriches the soil for the rest of us and helps me know what we're talking about and know what you guys need to hear about. So please keep doing your own work and sharing with us. And as we're moving toward this big exploration of relationship, realizing that everything's relationship all the time, you're relating physically, emotionally, mentally, all these things are arising. Let your awareness meet it gently. Be gentle, kind with yourself right now. This great paradox of all this work that we're doing is that we all want to get enlightened, whatever that means to you. You want to get wiser, you want to get healthier. This is enlightenment. You want to improve this world and help others. That's enlightenment. We all want this big transition. We all want this big transformation. We want this we want this moving, crossing. The great paradox is that if that we can try to be controlling or grasping or attached around that desire, which will keep us in our stories and our ideas. Again, the only things you can grasp are your own stories, your own ego stuff. And that the passage, this real passage into enlightenment, comes when we're willing to let go. And we realize that this moment, it's actually here. And that all of our ideas about trying to be something else that's over there on the other side of this canyon, that is keeping us from getting the very thing we want. So don't wait for tomorrow to love yourself. Don't wait until you get better or wiser. Don't wait until you quit whatever bad habit you picked up during quarantine. Now, right now and here today, you are already lovable, infinitely so. Bye, Holly. I'm going to close us up with the end of the Nisargadatta text. I gave you guys a nice big chunk, but what I'm reading now is the very, very last part of Be Indifferent to Pain and Pleasure is the chapter, and it's on page 213 for those of you who have the book. This is how I'm going to wrap up. I don't see any questions. So, okay. Now, what you have learned here becomes the seed. You may forget it, apparently, but it will live and in due season sprout and grow and bring forth flowers and fruits. All will happen by itself. You need not do anything. Just don't prevent it.